but they doubted. Then Jesus approached and said to them, "All power in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always, until the end of the age." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Last weekend, I could barely hear myself say Mass. We have a lot of babies and young children, especially at this Mass, it seems, and all 15 of them at once during the consecration last week decided to start crying and screaming. No matter how loud I got to try to scream over them, they just got louder and louder and louder and drowned me out. Well, I had to laugh after a while. It was too funny. All those babies crying, I guess, is good noise, though. It's a sign of life for our parish, and I hope those babies keep coming. Somebody should go out and get more babies and bring them into church. But in the meantime, we just give thanks to God for all the blessings that He pours out upon us. All that noise of babies crying is good noise. But not all the noise, I think, in our world is always good. I was watching a video recently about a man named Bernie Krause, whose job it is to go out and record nature sounds for movies and TV shows. When he began his career back in 1968, it would take him about 15 hours of recording time in order to get a 1 hour of uninterrupted nature sounds. No cars or airplanes in the background, no talking around. He would get, dogs barking or lions roaring, and that's what you hear in the movies. Well, today it takes him over 2,000 hours of recording time just to get that same 1 hour of uninterrupted nature sounds. That's how much noise has grown in our world. There is so much noise in our world that sometimes it's difficult to hear God speak. What was so unique about the people of Israel, like we see in our reading today, was that they were the people who heard God's voice. Unlike any of the other nations, they went to Mount Sinai and they heard God give them the 10 Commandments, give them the law. Blessed are those people that the Lord has chosen to be His own. And we are the spiritual descendants of the people of Israel. We have been chosen by God to be the bearers of His word, to hear Him speak, to communicate His message of love to the world today, to go out and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, inviting them into this relationship of love, this conversation of love that these three persons of the Trinity have been having from all eternity. These three persons have been telling each other about their love for each other. It is the Father who speaks that word of love. It is the Son, Jesus, who is that word of love spoken into our world. And it's the Holy Spirit who translates, who reminds us of that love. In our reading today, we hear that the Holy Spirit is in our hearts, crying out, "Abba, Father." It doesn't say the Holy Spirit is whispering, "Abba, Father." It says the Holy Spirit cries out. He's trying to be heard over all the noise of this world, reminding us that we are all sons and daughters of God. Reminding us that we are like those little children, crying out for help, waiting for God to help us, to nurture us, to give us life. It's hard today for people to hear the voice of God. In a world in which 67% of people in Ireland can vote to get rid of the pro-life amendment in their constitution, there's an inability to hear God and His law, to hear the voice of the most vulnerable in our society crying out for help. Pope Francis this week was talking about the decline of religious vocations, especially in much of the developed world. And it's not just the noise that's in our world. He talked about the fact that we have a society of convenience, where oftentimes convenience or wealth are worshipped above all else, valued above all else. And in that environment, it's hard for young people especially to hear the voice of God calling them. Not just to priesthood or religious life, but to marriage, to a trade. I had a plumber say to me recently, no young people want to be plumbers anymore. It's good money and there's many jobs available, and yet people don't go into the field. That type of environment, we need to listen even more closely to what God is saying to us. And fortunately, there are many people who continue to seek to hear God's voice. One such person in our own parish is Nadeau, a young man in our parish you might recognize from the many ministries that he's involved with, but Andre has a very exciting announcement for us today.
Father Matt. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Nadeau. First, I want to take a moment to address what we're doing here. Why do we gather here? Why do we commit our time and our money and our work to this church? Religious education programs, our Crucio formation, our Respect Life Committee and our women's group, Knights of Columbus, music ministers, altar servers, lectures, our sacraments, and this Mass. What's the purpose of all this? And what are we doing? Life in our community here, and especially within my family, everything has revolved around this. Friendships are grown here, struggles are cured here, hurts are healed with this, our families find joy in this, our problems are solved with this, and our moments of peace, hope, and love, we turn to this, our faith. But why? Because this is Jesus. Everything, all friendships, morality, truth, love, everything directs us here to his church. We are created and we belong to our Creator. We are here because we ought to give everything of ourselves to worship our God. In the past year, I've found myself contemplating, why can't everyone see this? That Christ is everything that we need. What would happen if everyone gave their lives to this, to Jesus? Isn't this life we have just a means to get ourselves and those we love to heaven? So maybe I can help everyone see this. So I've been on a captivating journey over the past year, really since September, accompanied by our great vocations director, the awesome influence of the Holy Spirit, and the cherished support and prayers of you all. My involvement in our parish life, participation in the Crucio movement, and service as a leader in New Hampshire Catholic camps has stirred in me a newfound desire to serve God's people. So after spiritual guidance with Father Matt, countless pages of paperwork, medical appointments, application forms, and a board interview, I've received word that I've officially been accepted as a seminarian for the Catholic Diocese. Along with such, I've been accepted to Providence College in Rhode Island as a transfer student. So beginning this fall, I will be studying towards a degree in philosophy and living at Our Lady of Providence Minor Seminary in Rhode Island, with about 20 other seminarians from around New England. Given completion there, and under the direction of the bishop, I will move on to major seminary to attain a degree in theology and finish studies for the priesthood. So I have about 7 years left of studying ahead of me as a transfer student. Upon ordination, God willing, I will be appointed to a parish somewhere within our diocese in New Hampshire. Seminary follows the course of college year, so I'll have the summers to serve in various parishes throughout New Hampshire, or perhaps even return here to continue land surveying with my dad. Our Lady of Providence is under 4 hours away, so I'll be sure to return and visit when possible. So I'm greatly enthused about this new course of life, yet I have to make comment about my will and God's plans for me. I'm thrilled to give of myself and dedicate my life to the service of God's people, but I begin this adventure with the understanding that God's will reigns. I ardently hope that the priesthood is God's plan for my vocation, but if it's not, I'll happily return here to our beloved North Country, or to wherever God directs me. With this, I have to thank everyone in our church family for support, inspiration, good example, and steadfast faith. I can say with confidence that if it were not for the devoted members of our parish here, and the active families bringing children into the future of our church, I would not be pursuing this direction. So thank you. I ask you to look around us. Look at everything here. Look at who we are in this rural, extensive North Country parish we call our own. This is all because God has given us the opportunity to invite others into His love. Without even one person's involvement, this parish family can cease to exist. So please continue to keep me in your prayers. I can assure you now, my parish family, that you will be in mine. Thank you.
In the midst of our world today, and yesterday we had 2 men ordained to the transitional diaconate. They're deacons as a last step before they become priests next year. Keep them in your prayers. We have 5 men who are applying to seminary in our diocese this year, including Andre. And Andre speaks very well about how seminary continues to be a time of discernment, of listening to God's will. And a couple years from now, if Andre comes back and realizes that priesthood is not for him, that's not any type of failure. That will be a great success, that he will have gone and learned about himself and about the faith and realized what God is calling him to do. And so keep him in your prayers. Keep these young people in your prayers. Don't forget that next weekend, we're having our 40 hours of prayer for both our new pastor, Father Matthew Schultz, as well as for vocations for the priesthood in our diocese. Every parish in our diocese is doing something to pray for vocations next weekend. And so please join us if you can. We're going to be 10 hours at each of the churches. We have all the hours filled. Thank you very much. But if you haven't signed up for an official hour, just find an hour that works for your schedule next weekend. The schedule's in the bulletin. But come and listen to Jesus here in the Eucharist, who will be on our altar. Listen, because God's calling all of us to a vocation. Maybe He's calling us to forgive someone. Maybe He's calling us to grow in prayer. But God calls each one of us. So let's take the time to listen to Him next weekend. Let us